This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everyone, to this week's episode of DocNJock. Hopefully everyone enjoyed the sun. The sun's out, guns out. It's great. It's great, man. At least a couple days where people could actually feel like they could act normal, get outside, walk, be outside the confines of their homes. My goodness, man. Lots to get into in the world of sports. A shocker. A shocking development with the Detroit Lions. What does it mean? Can't wait to get Adam's thoughts. Man, it's an interesting time now with the Detroit Lions as one of their key members, a founding father, as Dan Campbell likes to say, just decided on a Monday that it was time. So we're going to talk all about it. We got to break it down because it has huge ramifications for the Detroit Lions. And then as you guys are listening to this, I'll be on my way to the finally, the long NFL season starts when you cover a team from July 31st until basically June 5th or so. And so that means that finally there'll be 6 weeks where no practice, no media session, just following which Detroit Lions shows up on what podcast. And it'll be just a great opportunity to walk away from the sport of football. And it's a long year, but a good year. And the Detroit Lions got a lot of things to pay attention to. We're going to talk about it. And it's because where were you when you heard the news that Frank Ragnow, the all-pro center, decided, not for me. There were whispers this last 7 days that maybe he was unhappy with his contract, but at this point in time, people are now knowing that he debated. He was a player that took the offseason to kind of decide if he was physically ready to do it again. And at 29 years old, after banking more than $50 million in contracts, he was like, I just don't got it. And for a player of that caliber, if you're not all in, if you're not willing to grind and get after it, that sport is not for you. So for Frank Ragnow, if those doubts crept in, I'm glad he retired, but glad for him personally because the Detroit Lions, it's a massive roster hit.
Yeah, for sure. It's a huge blow. I was just getting out of work. I was headed across the street to the gym, putting my headphones in and kind of going through clearing a bunch of updates that I got. And then I seen that update and I was like, whoa, wait, what? So then, you do like everybody else does and you start hunting around trying to find information as fast as you can get it. And initially I was shocked. I was blown away because earlier that day, I started putting a bit of a rundown together for this show.
Yeah.
And like you said, all the conversation was about his contract. And I had a very strong take about him being upset about his contract, especially when you start to kind of read what was kind of being reported and what was coming out from different beat writers. So I had a very strong take and a very strong opinion. And I was like, whoa, hold up. So those guys were kind of off the scent a little bit. That wasn't what was going on. It was Frank trying to figure out if Frank can go, and Frank's got the ability to go for the rest of the season and to give it his all. Because like you said, the NFL is not the game where you can kind of go in at half stepping. You've got to be able to give it 100%. Otherwise, there's no point in doing it. You're just going to end up getting hurt. You're going to play hurt. You're going to be hurt. You're going to end up hurting your team. There's just too much hurt involved if you're not 100%. So I was blown away. I was shocked. And look,
Real fast. I want to give context to that. Dave Burkett went on a recent interview this week, and he added more context. He heard about Frank Ragnow's unhappiness with the contract back in March. He said, that's when I heard it, and that's the same time frame that he heard it with Alex. So, look, when you don't have any guaranteed money, you're not going to be happy. And when you're on the last year of your deal and you're a good player, you're not going to be happy. But to the degree that it was going to probably impact OTAs, I doubt it. But that's where people kind of read into it, and it's understood. But everything, like, people look at it black and white. Was Frank Ragnow happy with the situation with the Lions? No. When you go into it and you are one play away where the team can cut you and say you're done, no money. No one's gonna like that. And why would he be happy with that? Why would he be like, I'm a player that signed a contract? Yeah, but the market made it so that I now the top guy makes 20, I make 9. So teams ask you to take less. The issue that people have outside is, well, teams ask you to take less when you suck, and players go, okay, for that trade-off, I want to raise when I dominate. And so for Frank, that's the trade-off. That's a trade-off.
Look, I totally understand that, right? I think we both agree Frank Ragnow, at this point of his career, he's a top 5 center in the league. He's no longer the best guy in the league, but he's a top 5 center in the league. The guy was paid top 4 money. So, like, inflation happens. Yeah. Things happen. The market constantly gets reset. I get where he's coming from. It's the same thing with Alex Anzalone, right?
Correct.
Alex Anzalone has been one of the most productive Detroit Lions defensive players since he signed his contract. Initially, when he signed his contract, the team took a chance on him, and he signed his contract, and he took a little bit of a chance on himself. Now he's at the end of it, and we both agree. There's got to be some meeting in the middle. He deserves a bit of a raise, but how much? And where does that kind of fall? And so, like, I understand where Frank is coming from, and I understand where Alex is coming from.
Correct.
And I get it. I understand, because you guys have been either the best guy on this team or one of the best guys on this team, or you're one of the best guys at your position.
Correct.
So I totally understand. All that being said, I was blown away initially. And I know on this podcast, I come off as a bit of a hater for Frank Ragnow. Definitely hate on Taylor Decker. And look, with Frank, it's not so much that I don't think Frank's good at what he does. Like I said, I feel like Frank Ragnow is a top 5 center in the league. I feel like he is one of the best guys at what he does. The thing is, Frank is constantly hurt.
Yeah.
Frank is usually beat up. And that's the one thing about Frank Ragnow. He's a freaking warrior. The guy goes out there, played with a broken throat, played with a torn pec, played with a shredded groin, on top of just normal aches and pains of playing in the league. So Frank Ragnow is and was the heart and culture of this team. He embodied all of it. So I don't hate on Frank Ragnow, the player. I think Frank is very good at what he does. When I start talking about, during our draft specials, it was more, we need to find a guy to replace him, because for 2 years, Frank beat around the bush, was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to play. I don't know if I'm going to be able to come back. Like back in, 2023, he kind of let those thoughts come out. And we were all shocked when he said, like, oh, wait, what do you mean? And then you find out he's got a toe that's never going to be right ever again. And you're kind of like, okay, so he's talking about right now, he's in it, right? He's in that physical ailment of all of it. He's beat up. He's hurt. Let's give this a little bit of time. Let's see what happens. So he comes back, and next thing you know, he's like, okay, I feel good. Last year, basically kind of the same thing. Little him and hawing about whether or not where he was as far as mentally and physically. Turns out he feels great, comes and plays. This year, he's not at the same point. He can't get over that hump. He's banged up. He's hurt. And that's why he made the decision. Totally understand it. Totally respect it. It is a massive blow, though, to this Detroit Lions offensive line, because, like I said, you're losing a guy who is top 5 in the league at his position, which is arguably one of the most important positions on that offensive line. On top of that, he is your second best offensive lineman that you have. Penei Sewell being number 1, Frank Ragnow is a very close number 2. You lose him, all of a sudden, what was once considered the strongest unit on this Lions football team is now a bit of a weakness. And that had me rattled, and that had me shook. What was your initial reaction? I know you were on a golf course when you found this news out, and I know you had to be upset because you're trying to get 18 in, preparing for the Rocket Mortgage Classic, doing the media thing, and then this news comes out, and you're not necessarily near your computer.
Right.
I know you got your phone in your hand and you're on Twitter and you're doing all the things. So what was your reaction? What happened to you? Because you were doing something else completely different than following the Lions when this took place.
Yeah, kid or brother get a Monday off. It was like, finally the weather's nice. I'm like, okay, it's slow time. This is a day I don't have to really do a lot of nothing. And you just hit a nice drive on 18 at the Rocket Mortgage Classic, hit the fairway. I'm looking at about 180 yards to the pin. And I'm like, what? No. I'm like, well, luckily you have coverage and things like that, but you're just like, now the carefree nature of the day's over. So, it was God. God was just like, no. You can't have a day off. What the fuck are you talking about? You need a day off. What do you need that for? Then I'm going to let all your drives be beautiful into the fairway. I hit, side note, I hit like 8 to 10 fairways. Not that great a distance, but for the most part, the swing was good. The flight was awesome. It's the chipping and putting that will just kill around every single time. But it was fun anyway because you knew you had coverage. And look, in the end, it's a shock, and everybody reacts to it. First thing I said to myself was, okay, when you're not into it, it's time to look to the replacements. And my humble opinion is I think the Lions Super Bowl chance took a big shock. They did go out on Wednesday and make a decision to get Tristan Colon, but he's only played 15 starts. So he's a depth guy. So the options are still there. So what does Brad Holmes need to do? He better find out if Graham Glasgow and Tate Ratledge are the guys, because those are the two names. And it's clear I had a feeling, that's why we did the piece at Lions on SI, the 8 guys that the Lions could sign, and Cologne was on that list. They need competition. They're looking for answers. And I do think that at the beginning, at least with experience, Graham Glasgow's the answer. He's like the B+ answer. It's a downgrade, but not that much to the point where you don't think that, okay, the offense can still function. And to your point when you were speaking, I do think that players do legit self-scouts and they look at every game. If Frank Ragnow turns on, and if you guys are one of those people that has the film and you watch the All-22, against the best competition he probably faced last year, the Bills, he got worked. It was his worst game, and he looked it. He got bull rushed up the middle. Wasn't his best game. He rebounded the rest of the way. But if he just watched that film, and he said, "Man, what the hell happened? I got bull rushed. They attacked me. They exposed some weaknesses with his movement, with some of the rushes that came from the Bills defense, and he had his worst game against the Bills." So he looks at that physically. He just didn't feel it. He didn't feel it. So what's next for the Detroit Lions? You better hope Graham Glasgow's the guy, because do you think that for the time being, as a stopgap for maybe 1 year, you okay with Graham Glasgow and maybe Tate Ratledge is the center of the future moving forward, but you're not going to count this year in such a big year and just hand it to a rookie. That's why they're trying to catch him up to speed, and that's why you guys got to pay attention to the reports that come out. Pay attention to @Detroit Podcast. One of the biggest takeaways was at OTAs, Tate's at center. Something's up. And see, I really respect that you guys understand what we're about. We're around it. Why do you think I came up with the opinion that Frank Ragnow should hold out? You think I just came up with that? I sat around and I said, okay, Tate's playing center. He's not happy with his contract. I didn't think he was thinking about really retiring. I didn't think he'd make the decision. I figured he's going to contemplate it. I said, you know what? If he's not happy, my opinion piece received well, but some people didn't like it. I said, he should hold out. What's the point? And so that was my thinking, is you know what? I've made money. I've done this before. I don't need to come do this shit. So I was in the ballpark, and you could see it too. @Detroit Podcast, my thought was, look, this guy, Tate Ratledge, same size and 5 years younger. So my quote was to, in essence, tell you guys, Frank knows. Frank knows that, hey, it's up. He basically let the team kind of know where he was thinking, that he was debating it. And so the Lions went out and they got his replacement. They knew. Brad Holmes, they knew.
I want to drill down on that a little bit, because do you feel like Brad Holmes did enough to prepare for this?
Yes.
Now, look,
Yes.
Frank Ragnow's been basically, like I said, beating around the bush for 2 years now.
Yes, he did.
There had to have been conversation between Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell, and Frank Ragnow.
Yep.
And over the course of the last 2 years, they don't ever actually go out and draft a center. Tate Ratledge is a guy who's supposed to come in and play guard. He's played 0 center in his college career. And now you're going to ask him to make that big move, that transition in the NFL to that move. And look, we touched on it. Center is incredibly important. You are calling alignments. You're calling shifts. You're basically pointing out what is coming and who's got to have their head on a swivel and where that pressure is going to be at. That's a lot to just dump on a rookie. Now, look, I understand he was drafted very high, but that's a lot to dump on a guy who hasn't done this in the past, hasn't done this at a high level in the past. I don't care if you do it in high school. You didn't do it in college. You didn't do it in the SEC. And now you're expected to do it at the highest level there is. I feel like that's a big ask. I feel like Brad Holmes, knowing basically Frank Ragnow gave him a 2-year runway And Brad Holmes did nothing to address this. If you count bringing in Graham Glasgow as a possible stopgap, fine. That works. Again, you're asking Graham Glasgow now to play out of his natural position. This guy likes to play right guard. You're going to ask him to play center. He can do it. He's done it. He's very effective at it. Like you said, might not be the best option. Probably if we're grading it on an A, B, C, D, E, F scale, it's probably a B. I think I'm a little higher on it because I think Graham Glasgow's pretty good at playing center. I'd probably give it a B plus, A minus. But again, I don't know if that was the original plan going into this year, was to have Graham be the guy. I feel like Brad Holmes kind of dropped the ball here. I feel like you could have drafted a guy and had him sit and learn behind Frank last year. Didn't do it. Could have drafted a guy this year. Now, going back and looking through the guys that were available, don't necessarily know if that was the best option, because I think the first center selected was somewhere in the 5th round. So unless this guy's gonna to pan out to be an All Pro or even a Pro Bowl player, I think chances are thin there. But you gave up a ton of draft capital in this draft to go get a wide receiver. And to me, it kind of feels like your offensive line was kind of hanging in the balance by losing Frank Ragnow, and Brad Holmes just kind of whistled by the graveyard.
Yeah, it's look, he's a veteran. I think he's got an opportunity to be able to step in and be the stopgap. But to your point, yes, the line's new. I think that probably most reasonably they knew he was debating it, but probably felt 60-40 he was coming back. But they still made the move to get linemen. And also, too, guys, remember, they didn't just draft Tate Ratledge. They drafted Miles Frazier, who also could be in line to compete for opportunities. And they also, at OTAs, had Colby Sorsdahl training as well. So they have opportunities to try and find somebody. And I do think that they believe right now Tate Ratledge is the guy. And I think that they believe that Ratledge is the center, left guard is Mahogany, right guard could potentially be Miles Frazier, and you also have others in competition as well. So they knew. And even though Tate Ratledge...
Where's Graham Glasgow fit on that? Graham Glasgow
stopgap. This is it.
Getting lapped.
He's
getting lapped. No, he's gonna be a depth guy.
Yeah, he'll be it. This will be it. He'll play 20-25 with the Detroit Lions, and then they'll move on. They'll get some cap savings and move on after this year. He'll train Tate Ratledge, and Ratledge will be the center.
But he's not going to be a starter, is what you're saying. Graham Glasgow won't be the starter this year.
I do think he'll be the starter. I think that,
okay, he will.
Yeah,
okay.
Because you don't want in the postseason against the schedule that you got. You need a guy with experience. So if he's at least reasonable in his role, he's the guy for 2025, and that's it. And then you hand it over, you go younger. So this offensive line quickly, cuz NFL not for long, quickly revamped. 3/5.
Bro.
And then 4th-5th is going to be out pretty soon too, where probably Manu could be the guy at left guard, or you probably what could most likely be what the tea leaves are when you read it. Panay moves to the left side. You protect Goff for the next decade, and then you have Manu the monster at
that's
the right
where
side.
I was going. That's where I was going with this next.
Yeah.
Because you see Frank going away, right? And Taylor Decker's not going to be too far behind him. And look, I bagged on Taylor Decker probably since week 10 of last year. I felt like they needed to figure something out to replace that right guard position, because the thought is Penei Sewell is going to move to the left side. He's going to take over that left side and be that left tackle. And again, I think they did a good enough job of addressing the guard position, right? I don't really think they did a great job of addressing the center position. Sometimes guards and centers are interchangeable, right? We see it with Graham Glasgow. It's kind of what we're talking about right now. You're seeing it with Tate Ratledge, a guy who played guard and sounds like he's going to shift over to center, be the center of the future. If Graham Glasgow is at his right side flanking him, I don't think I have as big of a problem with him starting as center. I am concerned because, again, like we said, that offensive line was the strength of that offensive unit. And Jared Goff is a guy who does not like to be throwing off a platform. If he's throwing off platform, he's not as effective. The offense bogs down. You end up wasting downs, and you end up turning the ball over. So with having a rookie as your center makes me concerned. I think that impacts the ceiling of this team. How quickly he can get brushed up and learn, we'll see. But having Graham Glasgow basically on his right side, kind of calling out those protections and going over stuff with him in the film room, I think that'll be a big help. And I think that could work Emphasis on that could work. Cody Sorzal, you brought that up. Is this kind of the last run for him? This guy was a guy who was drafted as a tackle, never really seemed to fit. They've tried moving him around to play guard. It didn't really seem to work. Now you're repping him at center. You basically have tried him all over the offensive line. To me, he kind of feels like a bit of a Hail Mary.
Yeah. It's a depth piece. Basically, it's how good a backup can you be? If something happens, can we call on you? He's got to have a big camp. And this is the year for him. If he doesn't, he'll be replaced. And that's just simple as that. So it's a chance. They want to see what he's able to do. And as long as a player can do a couple different things, if he's called upon this year, he's got to showcase that he can do something, because 2024, not his best effort to showcase what he's about. So he's got to put it on tape. But look, too, he was a later round pick, so there is some time to develop. But yeah, those guys, Manu, Colby Sorsdahl, Ewusika, role player. They gotta showcase what they're about. Kingsley Ikwakun. They gotta just kind of do what they gotta do, and the Lions will continuously look. And this new guy will be a depth piece potentially to compete. If Sorsdahl's not the guy, then they can move on and target it. But he's a depth guy. He's not gonna, I don't think, pepper the depth chart to move up too quickly. Look, in my opinion. Now, I do want to ask though, cuz with this news, my thesis going into it all year, so it's not, to me, altering my prediction for the year. I think it's an 11-6 year, get to the postseason, see what happens, but I have no expectation. My thesis for the year is hope for the future is great, fear for 2025. I don't see this team winning a Super Bowl, and with Frank Ragnow leaving, it just makes it that much harder. You don't lose an all-pro, and out of respect to Frank Ragnow, just say, we just move on. You're downgrading a position. Now, to what degree? Maybe 15%, 10%, but it's still a downgrade. You're not better than you were losing Frank Ragnow. Come on, he was one of the best in the league. Top 3 at the position. Yep. So I'm not going to sit there and then go, yeah, we lost Frank Ragnow, bring on the Super Bowl. It doesn't make any sense. My old-ass head is not going to say that. And it goes to what I said. The schedule's hard. The teams are great. There's more athletic quarterbacks in the conference. You got a little bit more work to do to jump the hurdle. And I think that this year is another good year, but not a Super Bowl year. I think this is a big dent. It hurts the team.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Look, you don't lose an all-pro player and then go to a rookie by the looks of it and just say, yeah, we're better at that position. Things are okay. It's going to be okay. There's going to be no loss anywhere. That doesn't work. That doesn't work for me. Look, I'm a little bit more pessimistic on this team than you. I think they're a 9-win, 10-win team at the top. With losing Frank Ragnow, I think this firmly plants them at 9-8. I think Frank Ragnow, losing him, that's a huge loss. That's going to account for at least a 1-game difference. You know, all of a sudden, everybody else in the NFC North is now licking their chops, right? Because they're like, okay, cool. We've got a rookie in the middle of that offensive line, and it's like we can just basically blow up the middle, and you're gonna get the Goff. You're gonna get pressure on Goff. Goff's gonna be throwing off that back foot again, throwing off platform, and you can force turnovers. Everybody in the NFC North now licking their chops. I don't think you have as firm of a control over this division as you once did. This is one of the toughest divisions, if not the toughest division in football. And to lose a guy who was the centerpiece of the strength of this team, specifically the offensive unit, I think that's a monster loss. Does the O-line now become the biggest need for this team? This is something you and I have kicked around all offseason. We've talked about the need to go out and get a defensive end. We've talked about the need to address different parts of the defense, whether it be the edge position or whether it be a tackle position, because don't forget, you're not going to have a Lee McNeil until probably middle of October if you're lucky. And Aiden Hutchinson's coming back off of a broken leg. Yes, he looks good, but we'll see what happens when the lights are the brightest. Edge was always the thing that we said, or some addition to that defensive line. Does offensive line now supersede that? And is that now the biggest need for the team? Because I feel like you could argue that if you really wanted to.
I think you could argue it. Yeah, it's the biggest area of concern is the offensive line.
I think that might be the best way to put it. It is definitely the biggest area of concern because I think they have pieces.
Yeah. But
you don't know. Miles Frazier? Question mark. Tate Rutledge? Question mark. How is Graham Glasgow going to play this year? Question mark. Are we seeing the decline of Taylor Decker? Will it be kind of what the first half of the season was, or is it going to be more of what the second half of the season was? Question marks all over the place.
Question marks all over the place. And heaven forbid, you got to stay healthy. Graham Glasgow's got to produce. Otherwise, it's going to impact calls. Teams are going to blitz. You got to recognize where it's coming from. You got to make the shifts. So you got to be able to be in tune with Jared Goff, who's going to take more control of the offense. So it's a concern, but I do think that they can overcome it and still play at a very high level. Some people would argue that Graham Glasgow's a better center than he is at guard. So something that I do think he can take on as a challenge. And luckily it happened at this time where he's got a whole training camp to get better and work and grind and get with Jared Goff and then work with Tate Ratledge, who will also add some insights on the position and I think will be an asset in the coming years. So now you get some cap space, cuz does this give you the idea? Because everyone knows it now. Everyone's like, well, it doesn't matter how much cap space, the $10 million that you save. It doesn't matter. Brad hoards the money. But to me, it's just going to go towards the extension for Alex and for Aiden, in my opinion. I don't think it means you're not getting Trey Hendrickson. You're not adding funds to get anybody else. It just means, all right, we got some wiggle room here to get Alex the money that he needs once we figure out what we're doing with Aiden.
Yeah, that is my big fear that they're going to do with this. It's going to be used to extend somebody, to take the money and get the deal done with Aiden, get the deal done with whomever that they're going to have to get. Brian Branch maybe might get the extra, I think it's about $9 million or so. Initially, my thought was like, all right, cool. If Brad is as good as everybody says Brad Holmes is, right? You've got enough pieces. He did a good enough job drafting. Tate Rutledge will either fill in at guard or he'll fill in at center. He'll grow into whatever position he's in. Does it suck? Yeah, it's probably going to be tough for the first 6 games or so, but he hopefully will figure it out if he's as good as everybody says he is. Maybe Miles Frazier is better than we think, and he's able to step in right away and play some quality snaps. So if Brad Holmes is as good as Brad Holmes, everybody says Brad Holmes is, you take that $9 million and you take your draft pick and you go get Trey Hendrickson. That was my thought. I was like, all right, you got cap space. You now have extra money to go do what you want. And you look at what Trey Hendrickson wants. It's in the neighborhood of about $9 million extra. So you could pay him what he wants. And again, the cap's not really real. You've got a cap that continues to grow every single season. I think last year was probably the largest percentage that we've seen. I think it went up, like $27 million last year? So it's just like free money. There's like, here, take some extra money to go buy more players and do more things with. You've got the ability to do this if you really want to do this. Jared Goff's contract, I have to believe when he signed that deal, the conversation was like, hey, just so you know, 2026, we're going to have to restructure this. No problem doing this now. No problem giving you all the money up front. But 2026, we're going to have to restructure this because we're going to have to open up some other avenues for some more money. You're not going anywhere. You're going to be here. But we're going to have to reconfigure this a little bit. And I think, by all accounts, he seems like a good enough guy and a good enough teammate to be willing to do something like that. So my thought was, you got this extra money, go get your edge rusher, beef up that defense. If your draft picks are as good as you think they are, and if your guys have come along as nicely as you have coached them up to, and look, Hank Fraley's a G of an offensive line coach. Like, that guy is like Merlin the magician. He can basically take turds and turn them into gold. So like, I have complete faith in him and what he's able to do. We just need to be able to see it on the field. I think you need now Brad Holmes to go out and beef up that defensive line. And that's what I want them to do with that cap.
Spend. Let's see what happens. It's crazy because even you and I do weekly podcasts. It's crazy that this is the 30th go around with the Lions and Trey Hendrickson. 30th. ESPN on Wednesday did another trade offer for Trey Hendrickson. And it's like, literally, even a guy like me who's in charge of putting out content about the Lions is like, I cannot write the 35th time, here's another trade offer for Trey Hendrickson. It's like, okay, we did a first round pick, second round pick, third round pick players. It's like, I think we have to find new material. So to all you content guys out there, find new material. I just can't write any more Trey Hendrickson stuff. It's the 30th time. He's not coming here. He is a guy that's going to command $40 million. The Lions want to give it to Aiden, and they want to go cheaper across from him. Rookie Marcus Davenport, $5 million, combined with Ahmed Hassanin making, I think, $600K and $4 million. You get two guys for $5 million. So that's just the antithesis of adding a guy for $40 million when you got to pay 10 more people. So I'm sorry, guys. You can keep trying it, but that is the true definition of writing for clicks. Which I get it. I mean, I'm not going to hate on it, but as a consumer as well as a producer, even I'm like, come on. It's like another round of Trey Hendrickson. We've already went around 20 times. By the 25th time, you still want to write Trey Hendrickson? Most people are like, okay, it's over. It's not happening. Come to the conclusion. Damn, 25 go-arounds with Trey Hendrickson, and people are still thinking about it. Because we did get a chance to see, and today another chance to see the Detroit Lions. I think you saw the main takeaways, which were the offense. The backups weren't that good, which is a little bit concerning. The defensive fronts were bringing pressure. The backup second string and third string offensive line got wrecked by the defenders there. It wasn't the best day. Look, OTAs, it's non-padded. It's hard to get a lot of takeaways. It's a lot of making sure that mentally people are in check. They're understanding a lot of things, but still a lot to take away. Still a lot of good things to learn about from what the players are saying. Jared Goff taking more control of the offense. Jamison Williams added 5 pounds of muscle since the end of the 2024 season. That's good. Hopefully we get a chance to see more highlights that they posted when we weren't there. So I think the biggest takeaway that you can say is that it was the intro to Frank Ragnow retiring. Tate Ratledge played a lot of center, so his training is now beginning. He's on the clock. And I think the other takeaway is, not in regards to a conclusive statement, but Hendon Hooker's got to show something. Show something. And I mean, people are like, well, it's time. Like, this is his third OTA. Third. Not his first, not his second. I'm like, how patient do you want a reporter to be? I mean, I come on here every week. I can't. 3 years? It's basically like, we're going to need, by the 200th episode of a podcast, you got to kind of be able to speak your mind and say something and be entertaining and turn it on. Like Hendon Hooker, and because I wish, and I've said it multiple times, but it's so fun to describe it. Kyle Allen would have had his helmet popped off by Hassanin. He was holding on to the ball. If it was live, Ahmed was running free and had the jailbreak, and Kyle was looking. Nobody was open, and Ahmed had to go around him. But everyone said, had it been live, Kyle would have been lifted off the ground and sent in on a shot.
It would have been a murder.
It would have been
on the field.
It would have been a guy getting obliterated. And I think the sick part was we all wanted to see it. Like, we were all like, oh, if it was live, Kyle would have ate one in the chest. It was like, oh. But he looked, they were trying, man. They were trying to throw the ball deep. Nobody could get open. And it was a little bit of a rough day. It's early. I get it. But we're just asking for, just find the open guys, release the football, Hendon, release the football, release the Kraken. Stop holding on to the ball so long. Just throw it away, because we all wrote 6 times, would have been a sack, would have been a sack, would have been a sack. So I do think, and I put out an opinion piece because I'm almost there, and I think you probably will convince me right now with your opinion. I think they just blow it out of the water and just get 2 new ones. Just pick the scraps from the Browns, get the Pickett or the Flacco, pick the one that doesn't make it, and get somebody else too. I could be over it. I don't think I'm going to be crying anymore. Hendon's a clipboard guy. I just think he's going to be a backup. At least it takes you 3 years to, now maybe with more talent, if he gets the opportunity, he can sling it around. But from practice and from all accounts, by what coaches say, you practice how you play how you practice. And I'm not impressed with Hendon Hooker.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like at this point, this is another one of those Brad Holmes, I blew it picks. You know what I'm saying? This was a 3rd round pick. This is a guy that you moved up to go get. And I don't know. We're going into year 3, and I'm just not seeing it work. I agree with you 100%. I think you have to, the hope is that maybe it's Joe Flacco who gets cut from the Browns. I really don't want Kenny Pickett. There's also conversations about maybe Will Levis being released and cut for cap saving purposes.
Yeah.
Look, I don't like Will Levis. I don't think he's great, but he might be better than what you got. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking to upgrade that room somehow. I mean, maybe they can go get Teddy Bridgewater off his high school football team again and bring him back in. But you're looking for a guy who can come into the room, and if something bad was to happen to Jared Goff again, this now becomes a much more real possibility because of what happened with Graham Glasgow retiring. And now you're going to be playing what sounds like multiple rookies or guys who are really getting their first go at playing all season long and starting. Not guys who are just kind of filling in for spot duty. These are now guys who are penciled in on your one deep. So you need to go find a guy who can come in and at least help you win games, or at least give you a chance, not necessarily to help you win it, but not lose you the game. Keep you in a position where your guys can go and get the W.
Yep.
So I agree with you 100%, man. I think you've got to look outside of the room. You got to look outside of this depth, or this type of depth of backup quarterback. You've got to go find somebody or something. If a guy like Will Levis gets cut, you got to bring him in. You got to be like, look, you're obviously not going to be a starter. You're going to learn from Jared Goff. We need to put you in spots where you're not going to cost us games, and just go do that. Find a guy who has wins on his record and has the ability to sit there and get you through a game until you can revamp and revise your game plan for whomever that is if something seriously does happen to Jared Goff. Yeah. What else stuck out to you at OTAs? Because you've been there, you've been covering it. We're now headed into week 2. What did you like? What don't you like?
Yeah, no, it was interesting too, because a lot of times you're like, am I being too negative? Like, man, Hendon sucks. That's what I was saying. I was like, what the heck is going on here? So I always like to go back and read what others are saying too. And I'm like, it's like my first takeaway, which I said it nicely. I've gotten nicer because with my old age, I said, Hendon's the same. He looks the exact same to me. Like, there was no growth. I was like, what the heck is going on here? So I think I always like to just throw out my first ideas unfiltered, because my first opinion was he hasn't changed. Like, come on, dude. Like, there's got to be something. Like, just nothing. Oh man, that stuck out. It stuck out so much, and others wrote it too. They were just like, it's early, but I was like, okay, that's not. I was like, can you just show something for us to kind of say anything nice about you out here covering this football team? I liked what I saw from Sam Laporta. I think he's ready. He's in lockstep. He's the guy in a lot of the drills where if Goff needs a completion, he's the guy. He looks good. He looks like he's being used. I love, the competition between the coaching staff has always been elite, and I think it trickles down to the players. So you're going to see a lot of chirping between Tashard Choice and Kelvin Shepard. They're friends, so it's great. It's great to see the competitiveness with each rep. And now I just hopefully what stuck out, what sucked, is first and foremost, I guess I'm going to air my beefs here. I don't want to see the third practice of 3 at OTAs. I want to see the first practice or the second. Like, these guys are, think about it naturally. If we were doing our 5th podcast of the week, Friday shows are never as good as Monday shows, where you're fresh after the weekend. The Friday, if we did a 5-day-a-week podcast, the Friday show would just be like, all right, you want to go 30 minutes? You'd be like, yeah, let's do 30 minutes. And when we're doing an hour and a half daily show.
How quick till we get to happy hour?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You want to cut out a couple topics? Yeah. So that's what I felt like. And then we're doing the same thing again, the third of 3. I'm like, personally speaking, let us see the juice. Like, oh, you don't think I would have loved to have reported yesterday seeing J-Mo torch Ennis Rakestraw? That would have, I did get a nice response to my somewhat vague description of what I saw. I would have liked to have seen something. I would have liked to have. It has the feel of going to work on a Friday when you're doing it on the very last day. It's literally the last practice that the Lions will have before they get 6 weeks off. So everybody's faded. Like, everyone's forgetting their pens. The reporters are tired. They're all forgetting their notebook. I forgot the roster. I went to the field and just didn't even care to take out the roster. I didn't even care. You know what I mean? We're at the end, the tail end. So what sucked was 20 guys out. Dan Campbell gets up to the microphone. He's like, all right, here's who's not here. You imagine, cause we do a podcast and we're like, oh man, I'm excited to see Terry and Arnold. Not there. I'm excited to see Broderick Martin. Is he more athletic? Not there. Oh, I'm excited to see Tyleik Williams. Not there. And I was like, And so he gets up there and he's like, okay, here's all the guys that are not going to be here. Tyleek Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Broderick Martin. You're like, these are all the guys I wrote I want to preview about. You killed you. He literally within 3 minutes whacked half the storylines that we wanted to see. So it made it feel unimportant. It made it feel like a chore, which I was excited to be there. I told all the PR, I'm like, I love it. This is great. We do is watch football. It beats the other stuff you do. You know what I mean? You get a chance to see something that's really cool. But 20 guys out. So hopefully some of them come back. I think Terrion and maybe St. Brown will be out there because they were doing some of those signings out there in Novi on Sunday. So it was cool to see Jared Goff in control. Always good to see QB1. I thought the other things that stuck out was clearly you have rotating offensive line that you want to see kind of develop and grow with different units. I thought the defense, seeing the defensive line kind of get after it and you just start pressuring the quarterback, trying to move around and try to bring the pressure was really cool. But it's an organized practice. It's cool. Too bad we didn't get to see Jake Bates. This is a lot of stuff that you didn't see. But the stuff that people saw, I thought was intriguing enough with some development of some of the players. But in the end, you can't glean too much about talent because of the fact that it is kind of the gelling. It's basically like an early install. It's the early preseason where you just, hey, here guys, this is what we're doing. Go run it. And they actually, to me, now doing this for so long, you start to realize it's kind of an opportunity where I think the coaches kind of want mistakes so they can coach it up. Like, don't do this because if you do this, then this is going to happen. So it gives the team a lot of opportunities to coach. So I do think in some way or form, it's not a way to make conclusive statements, but it's a way, okay, the quarterback's got to connect better with the receivers. They got to do a little bit more. And I think the other thing that was cool, two things. I think Rakestraw is battling to learn on the outside, which is good. He's getting thrown into the fire. It was good to see him check J-Mo. He lost some battles, won some battles, which was always good to see, but he did drop a clear interception. And then I like to see Grant bro, I'm not going to lie. I didn't expect Jared Goff to be muscling Grant Stewart. Grant Stewart was aggressive and was trying to get into the backfield, and Jared Goff held him back. And like Jared is probably a good 8 inches taller than Grant, but he was holding him back, had him like around the neck a little bit, just being like, "Hey, calm it down." And Grant was like a bulldog, like, "Arr, arr, arr." And this guy, Jared, like stood in and was like, "Hey, calm this down." And he had a presence. I like to see that. I like to see that. Hey, not your lane, partner. And I think if they would have threw down, I think Jared was willing to get after it. So I thought that was a cool venture, a cool thing to see.
So you brought up two names, and you brought them up a couple of times while you were talking there. J-Mo and Ernest Rakestraw. I want to talk about both those guys a little bit. With J-Mo, you talked about him adding a little bit of muscle. Coming in, sounds like he's in the best shape of his life. I like how we throw that around often. Usually it's what Miguel Cabrera going into baseball season. But J-Mo being this physically dialed in, is this going to translate to bigger plays on the field? And does he take that dramatic step forward that John Morton was talking about, that this is going to be a big year for him? Him getting physically right, does this translate into him having that breakout season? And Ernest Rakestraw, the mistakes he's making, are these more along the lines of, we'll call it first-year problems, or does this look like this might be a little bit of a trend and something we have to worry about and something we need to pay more close attention to as we get into training camp?
No, basically he's like a rookie because he's learning on the outside. It's good for him. It's baptism by fire. I do think he'll compete, but look, man, who better to train against than J-Mo? Like, you're going to get torched by J-Mo. He's going to blow past you, but you can learn so much about positioning. And it's basically like, hey, if something happens to Reed and Tyrion Arnold, those are the staples. And those are the guys that will be able to run the ship. And if something happens, then you hope that Rakestraw, we need to see more, clearly. And I think that we need to see his development and continued growth of this young player. But they want to see him on the outside and give him a chance because Robertson and others as well. And Brian Branch will take over the nickel spot and be solid contributor. So it's good. It's a great training opportunity to see what he does. Basically, Rakestraw will be a key figure to watch along with Terry and Arnold. Their growth is very key for this defense, and I'm excited to see it. I think that there's a chance there. But he's got an uphill battle to climb. He is now in the paper saying, I want to prove the doubters wrong. I have this, I take down what everyone's saying, and everybody is hating on me. Okay, I want to use that as fuel to get better. I hope that's the best thing you can do. And for JMO, I think JMO is going to be, you add 5 pounds of muscle and a dog mentality. I like what the potential is for JMO to kind of move into that number 1 spot and be a more integral part of this offense. I do think breakout season is coming. I would pencil in 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns, 80 to 100 receptions, and a lot of breakout opportunities. So I'm excited for that potential. But do you have doubts about the secondary, the way it is right now?
No, I think it'll be okay. I think Terrion Arnold going through the growing pains he went through last year. If you look at the first half of the season compared to the second half of the season, you could see the growth there. I think he'll be okay. DJ Reed, I've got some concerns. I don't know if he's going to be as good or better than Carlton Davis. My hope is he's better. So we'll have to see. As far as that the safeties go, I mean, look, Brian Branch, one of the best in his position. Kirby Joseph just got rewarded with a contract. I think he's going to be fine. I think overall that secondary is one of the deeper units on this team where you can just kind of point to guys and you're like, yeah, I feel comfortable with him stepping into that role if somebody was to get hurt. And look, cornerbacks go down all the time. Very similar to offensive linemen where you need like 8 of them, right? Cornerbacks and safeties, to me, it kind of feels like you need to have like 8 to 10 of those guys because they're constantly getting banged up, constantly getting nicked up. You need to work them in and out of the game throughout the course of the game. So to me, I feel like they are in a good position with their secondary. I feel like that is one of the strengths of this team. Not saying it's the strength, but I feel like it is a stronger unit, especially on that defense. If we had to rank the defense as far as units and kind of where they are as far as, secondary, linebacking core, and defensive line, I would probably go secondary as number 1. And then it's kind of a toss-up between your linebackers and your defensive line. I don't feel like they've done enough with their defensive line, so I'd probably put that as in my third spot. So I feel like the secondary unit and the corners specifically, I feel like they are okay. I feel like safeties, I mean, like I said, you got Brian Branch, you got Kirby Joseph. Those are 2 of the best in the league. You're going to be okay there. As long as both those guys stay healthy and as long as those guys can play, you'll be fine. So not really worried about those guys.
Yeah, no, this upcoming practice is good. And then the break, finally, a chance to flush everything out, look at players, talk to a bunch of the players that come off the field and get a sense of where they're at development-wise. But it's hope season. But it is starting to be, the hype that typically surrounds a team. A noted fan posted, it's starting to feel like doom and gloom season a little bit, maybe kind of coinciding with the weather, with Ben Johnson leaving, the tough schedule, Frank retiring.
Well, dude, I think you look at what this team has taken on in the last couple of weeks, right?
Yeah, it's a lot.
Even you go last couple of months, right? You lose both your coordinators. That's a big deal. You end up getting your schedule release, and that's a gauntlet of a schedule. And then one of those coordinators that you did lose goes internally to Chicago, stays within the division. So, hell yeah, that's a lot. And then all of a sudden, you lose an all-pro player in Frank Ragnow. It's a little bit tough not to be a little downsy about everything going on. And then for a guy like me, and I know a guy like you sometimes, you can get a little upset when they don't do what you want them to do, right? Like we feel like you just need to add a few more pieces to that D line. And for some reason, Brad Holmes says, you guys don't know what you're talking about. We're going to do it my way. And unfortunately, we got to do it Brad's way because he's the general manager. And we just want an impactful D end on this team.
Well, let's do it. 4, because we're fun, just because we'll give it exactly 120 seconds. Ben Solak, renowned NFL writer, on the level of the Doc and Adam Strozinski. The Bengals would receive 2026 second-round pick, 2027 fourth-round pick, which could become a third-rounder with performance condition. 2026 second, 2027 fourth, which could be elevated to a third. In exchange, the Lions would receive Trey Hendrickson and a 2026 fifth. Make that deal?
In a heartbeat.
Yeah, right. Like, exactly. Just throw it out there. Of course.
In a heartbeat, bro.
Exactly. It's like,
I would
come
make
on.
that deal, and I would have a 3-year contract extension waiting at the end of it for the guy.
Yeah. No, and okay, a little inside baseball here. What did impress me too, Aiden and Marcus Davenport did look in great shape. Okay. I am well aware, the Detroit Sports Podcast is aware of the growing bit about the best shape of their life. Something that I have never been in just yet. I was close, maybe at 28. I got down to like 165, almost very shredded, almost in the best shape of my life. But when I posted that, it was, to be honest, Marcus Davenport is in the best shape of his life. But I specifically used those words to elicit a reaction from you people, and you gave me the reaction, which was to just utterly laugh and to say, "Oh, we're doing that now." It was fun. It was in jest. It was one of those fun moments that makes this job fun, where you can report actual facts, but use a phrase that you know is going to elicit a response. And with him, like I said, you never want to do that to a player, but it's just funny because Marcus Davenport is technically in the best shape of his NFL career. He was flying out there, but your guys' GIFs were hilarious. You make it fun to do this, so thank you for your just utterly just rolling on the floor laughing. And the best responses were just funny. They said, "Okay, fine, Doc, we'll give you credibility. We think we originally thought he was going to play 2 games. Now he's going to play 3. So thank you for your insights, DOC. You guys made it fun. Another fun week, another great hour with my guy, Adam, the Jock Strozinski. Oh, man, good times. Always enjoy reviewing things that are going on. The Tigers are still playing very well. And next week, we'll start to look at those questions. Who do we add? Who do the Tigers add? Because people are starting to throw names out there. And we'll start to look at pitchers, infielders, players that could help this Detroit Tigers team continue their epic run, because it's a team now that I think not just podcasters, not just bloggers, everybody in the country is looking at that team going, if they add, what could the potential be for this baseball squad? So stay tuned to future episodes of the Detroit Sports Podcast as we shift a little bit less and away from football and into the Tigers and what they're doing, and a lot of good things happening in the world of Detroit sports. Follow Adam on Twitter /X at AdamRSTROZ. Follow us at Detroit Podcast. Keep interacting. Thank you so much for your engagement. We greatly appreciate it. Great stuff, cuz I can't wait to fire it up next week for the latest episode of Doc and Jock.
You fucking podcasters. I said don't let them in here.